Sunday morning kollel. Usually we take a halachic topic. Every week a different topic. Today, though, is the Yahrtzeit of the master of all commentators, Rashi. Rashi's Yahrtzeit, the 29th of Tamuz, and therefore not so much a halachic topic. We're going to explore Rashi. Rashi was born in 1040, okay? A while ago, almost 1,000 years, coming up 1,000 years. And where was he born? Somewhere in Western Europe. Most assume he was born in Troy or Troyes, which is not too far from Paris. These days it's not a very big city, but apparently hundreds of years ago it was a strategical
commerce
for trade and commerce. So it's not just a little village, it's not just random that he lived there. He definitely lived there later in life. The question is if he was born there. Some say he was. Others say he was actually born in Worms, in Vermeise, Worms, Germany. And yet there's a third option. He could have been born in Provence, which is southern Spain, southern France, southeast France, in the city of Lunel. Many great Chachamim come from Lunel. In fact, there was a whole group of rabbis known as the Chachmei Lunel, the wise men of Lunel, who were supporters of the Rambam in Provence. In fact, the Chidah mentions it could be, what does Rashi stand for? So every kid is taught it's Reb Shlomo Yitzchaki. His father was Yitzchak. There's an old Jewish word. It stands for Rabbon Shel Yisrael, the teacher of all Jews. But the Chidah says it could stand for Reb Shlomo Yarchi. Yarchi, Yareach, is a moon. Lunar, Lunel in Hebrew is Yareach, Yarchi. There were many Rishonim known as Yarchi, nicknamed Yarchi, that came from Lunel. So it could be that if it's true that his family originates and he himself was born in Lunel, that's why he had the nickname Reb Shlomo Yarchi from Lunel, and that's what the Yud would stand for. Okay, but
how old is he?
When he was born, he was fresh. He passed away at the age of 65.
Yeah. 65?
65. Wow. Well, is that it? For the Middle Ages, it's not too bad for the Middle Ages. But you know, the truth is, we're often told that back in the day, everyone lived short lives, and you look through the biographies of most Rishonim and Achronim, the vast majority had decent lives. Yeah, because those that passed away early, we don't know about them. All those that passed away young, we don't know much about. It was
his commentary on
right.
Chumash, Navi.
So, okay, great questions. Let's analyze. So Rashi's born in 1040, either in Provence, France, or Germany, somewhere in that part of the world. And his father is Yitzchak. And Rashi actually quotes his father in his commentary to Masechta Avodah Zarah, so it's understood his father was a scholar as well. Rashi had an uncle, Shimon HaZoken, Shimon the Elder, his mother's brother. I have the name like that, Simon the Elder. He was Rashi's uncle. Rashi apparently learned under him when he was younger. This Shimon was a student of Rabbeinu Gershom, the famous Rabbeinu Gershom, who lives from around 960 to 1040, around an 80-year long life. Rabbeinu Gershom had a yeshiva in Mainz in Germany, and he was called Ma'ur HaGeila, the light of the diaspora. Rashi actually writes somewhere that everybody today were students of his students. In fact, all of Rashi's teachers were students of Rabbeinu Gershom, starting with his uncle. His uncle Shimon HaZoken Simon the Elder, a student of Rabbeinu Gershom. And then Rashi makes his way to Germany, even if he was born in Worms, they say, but when he was younger, the family moved to France. So he had to make his way to Germany as a student, as a bocher. And he learns under 3 teachers. He has 3 teachers in Germany, besides his uncle. 3 teachers, all of whom were students of Rabbeinu Gershom. Now, exactly the order of who he learned by first, we don't know. When exactly he got married, we don't know. Some say he got married before he studied by any of them. Others say it was in between. He learned a little, left, got married, came back. We do know that while he was in Germany, he was very poor. He was there for years, he was very poor. He attests to that later in a letter. That at some point he was married and there was no food, there was no money, but he was busy learning. So the question is when exactly he got married. We don't know the year. But we do know the three people he studied by. His main teacher was Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Who is Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker? So join me in number one. This is from the Sefer Chassidim, written 800 years ago plus from Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, who passes away in 1217. So the Sefer Chassidim, going back a long time, 850 years, he writes a story about Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Maisa, a story about Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Hoya mechabed, he would sweep bizkenoi with his beard, lifnei Aron HaKodesh. Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Now you're going to see some question this act, but that's what the Sefer Chassidim attests about Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. And then he says another thing. When the people needed to be in front of the king, or lifnei Asholton, or the governor, the leader, so the Yidden had to line up for whatever purpose. This Rabbi Yaakov was a very humble man. He would take off his shoes and he would say, I am poor. The rest of the people, they have money, so they can offer money to the leader. But all I can do is beseech. All I can do is beseech and beg for mercy. So everyone can do their thing by offering monetary gifts, but all I can do is mine. Supplications. And when he would do that, then all the Yidden would follow suit. They would take off their shoes and say the same thing to the governor, and I guess, fine, that was a practice of Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. In number two is a comment of Reb Reuven Margolis. Reb Reuven Margolis, so he's passed away in the 1960s. He was a relative. He was a librarian. Well, he survived the war, and then he comes to Eretz Yisrael. He lives in Tel Aviv. A librarian who knew every single book of his library back to front of Torah books, and he wrote many, many, many works.
You must be related to him.
I wish I was related to him. You know, there was once there was a
study.
burial, right? There was a very wealthy man that was buried, right? And there's a poor guy that's prostrating himself and is crying and crying. Somebody asked him, you must have been related to the guy. So he said, B'chlal not. So why are you crying? That's why. I wish I was related to him. Reb Reuven Margolis, there are a few letters. The Rebbe wants to know that this guy had on his fingertips every single part of Torah. Chassidus Chabad apparently wasn't something that he delves into. So the Rebbe, charged him for that. Look in number two. Rav Margolis just notes, V'yu'uyin b'mishnus chachamim from Maharam Chagiz. Reb Moshe Chagiz, 300 years ago, he writes a sefer Mishnus Chachamim in Ois Reishu Tes. He says, Im heyois, although kishmuazu eino nichneses la'ozni, I don't accept this legend about Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker, mitam soid hakomas, because of a secret reason, b'mailas rimze kedushas chelke hazoken ha'elyon, the holiness that there are in the upper parts of the beard, ve'ein daiti maskim l'zalzel b'kedushasa, I don't think you can degrade the holiness. So you stand in front of the Aron HaKodesh and you're sweeping, it degrades the holiness of the beard. So he says, I don't agree with the activity. What?
In his old age?
Yeah.
The spirit of Bezik in his old age.
No, it's always understood to mean the beard. So Im calls it nonetheless, says Moshe Chagiz, Basar Machsheves Halei Vazlinon. God always follows the heart. The fact is, Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker meant well, and he had lots of reward. Ben Benoi Rashi Zal, his grandson was Rashi. Rav Moshe Chagiz says Rashi was a grandson of Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker. Says Reb Reuven Margolis, that is error. V'nei siyum zehu betos. That last line is definitely inaccurate. It's known that Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker was the rabbi shel Rashi, lois kenoi. Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker was Rashi's teacher, not his grandfather.
Call the teacher or father to
Yeah, but what does Ben Benoi mean? Because his son was Rashi. What's his grandson? Azeda. Yeah, then a son. If you say a teacher and a student is like a father and a child, so you should say you had a kid Rashi, but Ben Benoi is strange. Anyhow, why did Moshe Chagiz would write that? I mean, everyone knows Rabbi Yaakov ben Yoker was Rashi's teacher. How that happened, I don't know how that happened. But what's interesting is Rabbi Moshe Chagiz says that Rabbi Yaakov, the activity is questionable, but he had good intentions. Rabbi Moshe Chagiz is judging someone 700 years before him, Rashi's Rebbe. I mean, look at number 7. Go down the page to number 7. There's an excerpt from a letter of Rashi. Ani nitle be'ilan is a letter of Rashi. We have a sefer called Shuvas Rashi, response from Rashi. Rashi was not officially a Rav. Historians, Rashi had a yeshiva in Troy. After Rashi finishes learning in Germany, he comes back to Troy, and he has a yeshiva. He definitely has a yeshiva. Some say, but he wasn't in the official capacity of Rav, but he was fielding questions from everywhere, all types of halachic questions. And Rashi writes, Ani nitle be'ilan gadol, I hang my opinion. I completely rely on Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker. Va'af ki loy shamati mipiv dover, even though that particular halacha I didn't hear from his mouth. Mikol makom libi, my heart, usvarasi, my logic, havenasa, my understanding, mipiv yotso, all came from his mouth. Rashi attests that everything he has comes from Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker. And then you have Rabbi Moshe Chagiz saying Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker's activity with his beard was questionable.
Yeah, but I
thought not that it's questionable, that it didn't happen that way. Isn't that what it said?
I agree with you.
No?
I don't think it was the beard.
Or he's saying...
No, but he says, Bossam Machsheves Halev. No, he says he meant well. It sounds like he's saying, he did it, I wouldn't recommend it, but God rewarded him nonetheless. They say about the Chassid Reb Aaron Charatonov, the great composer of Chassidic Nigunim, that he would also... that he would also sweep the Aron Kodesh with his beard. Anyhow, it's just surprising that Moshe Chagiz would tackle Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker on this issue, when Rashi says everything I have comes from that man. Anyhow, so that's Rashi's main teacher, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker, and he learns by him in Germany. But like I mentioned, Rashi had 3 teachers in Germany. Another one was Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi. Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi. Rashi quotes them. And he says they're my teachers. And the third one was Rabbi Yitzchak, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yehuda. So there's Rabbi Yaakov Bar Yoker, Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi, Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yehuda. Rashi learned by all 3, and his uncle, right. Rashi learned by all 3 of them, not at the same time. Apparently one passed away, he learned by the other. All 3 of them, though, were students, the greatest students of Rabbeinu Gershom.
What about Moshe Adash? Is he considered he took a lot from him?
Moshe Darshan lived in Narbonne, that's in Provence. Didn't meet him.
But he took a lot of material?
Yeah. Oh, he was even earlier, yeah. He was in Spain. Yeah. Definitely, he's a big fan. Although in last week's parsha he questions him. Anyhow, so Rashi writes, Kulono, all of us, Talmidei of our students of the students of Rabbeinu Gershom. And quite literally, his 4 teachers were all students of Rabbeinu Gershom. The Maharshal, the great Reb Shlomo Luria, writes a letter. And this letter is often quoted by historians because there's some crucial dates that he supplies. And the Maharshal says, there's a pasuk that says that when the sun will set, the sun will rise. And the Gemara in Kedushin says that means that a great tzaddik doesn't leave this world until there's a new fellow born to continue carrying the torch, to continue the legacy. And the Marshal writes, so too with Rabbeinu Gershom and Rashi. The year Rabbeinu Gershom passes away is the year Rashi is born. And he gives the year 1040, which is the year 4,800. It's the year 4,800 in the Jewish years. Is the year 1040. So some say that the Marshal was not being exact. The year 4,800 is too round. He was just giving a round number.
He was born in 1105 to take over after Rashi.
Well, Rabbeinu Tam was born in 1100, 5 years before. He was 5 years
He
old.
was only 5 when the
Rashi passed away, yeah. So that's good enough, good enough. And Rabbeinu Tam ends up living in Troy later on in life, and he continues. So he continued his Eida's legacy. So some say the Marshal wasn't being the exact year. 4,800 is a very round number. In fact, there are those that believe Rabbeinu Gershom didn't pass away in 1040, but 1028. So some historians say, yeah, the Marshal was being exact that Rabbeinu Gershom passed away the year Rashi was born. That part's exact. The 1040 is not exact. So really both could have happened in 1028. Rabbeinu Gershom passed away and Rashi was born, which means Rashi lived a longer life. Add another 12 years to Rashi's life. So it's not 65, it's already 77. So, but the standard, the Marshal says 4,800, which is 1040, and that's just usually what's quoted. Fine. So, okay, after Rashi's done in Germany, he comes back to Troy and he opens up his grand yeshiva. And whether or not he had a position of Rabbanos, of being a Rav, he definitely was a master Rosh Yeshiva, and students traveled from afar. And some of his greatest students he took as sons-in-law. Rashi had no sons, 3 daughters. There was a Miriam, there was a Yocheved, and the 3rd daughter, some say, is Rachel. Some say that's just a guess, and really we don't know her name.
Name after his grandmothers. He named Tzaddikus. He aimed high.
That family has lots of Miriams and Yochevedes, though. They kept on. It happened to work out. So Rashi's daughter Miriam married the Rivon, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson, the Rivon, who we know finished Masechta Makkas. When Rashi passed away, he was in the middle of revising his commentary on Masechta Makkas. He didn't get all the way to the end. And the last word he wrote was the word Tahor, pure. That's where his manuscript ended when he passed away. The word Tahor, the word pure. And it was finished by his son-in-law, Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson, the Rivon. He married Miriam.
That was the first version? Is that the second?
Probably a 3rd version.
So he did finish Shas in a first version?
So that's, the Chidah talks that Rashi wrote 3 versions of Shas, each time perfecting it. Which would mean he could have finished Makkas in an earlier version. This was the final version. So why don't we have the earlier version? There's lots of mystery. There's lots of mystery about Rashi's commentaries. So Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson, though, what we have today, the end, it says it was finished by Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson. Actually, when we learned a part of that Masechta Makkas on our shir about tattoos, so they all quote Rashi's opinion on the matter. We mentioned it's actually not Rashi. What we have is actually his son-in-law, the Rivon.
Yeah, but we agreed that Ramban was more correct about the tattoos. I just want to put it for the record.
We said if a woman wants to go through a permanent makeup surgery, they have to become Sephardi for a couple hours and follow the Bavadia, because the Bavadia is really one of the only ones that gave the okay. Even though originally he was neged, but then he came around. Anyhow, Rashi has another daughter, Yocheved. She marries Rab Meir, a student of Rashi, Rab Meir. And the 2 of them have a great family. Their oldest son was Shmuel, Reb Shmuel, the son of Meir, Rashbam, who you have a commentary on Chumash, and the end of Masechta Pesachim is not Rashi. The last 20 blot or so is Rashi's grandson, Rashbam. Baba Basra, the vast part of the Masechta is Rashbam. And Tosfos often quotes throughout Shas from Rabbeinu Shmuel. Rashbam was a leading scholar of his day, Rashi's oldest grandson. Then, from that family, then there was a brother Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, the son of Meir, the Rivam. Rivam. He's quoted in Tosfos as well. He died young. Rabbeinu Tam actually writes in a letter to someone, you want me to answer you? I'm a broken man. My brother passed away. I'm shattered. It's hard for me to reply. Rabbeinu Tam was a brother. He was the youngest brother, Rabbi Yaakov. He was also grandson of Rashi. From this family, Yocheved and Meir. Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbeinu Tam. And they had a sister called Miriam.
Rabbeinu Tam's name was Yaakov.
Yaakov, because Yaakov Ish Tam. In Parshas told us Yaakov Ish Tam. In fact, a number of the Rishonim that were called Yaakov were nicknamed Tam. Not every Rabbeinu Tam is the same person. There are a few other Rabbi Yaakovs who were also nicknamed Rabbeinu Tam. The famous one was Rabbeinu Tam.
It would have been the Rim. Yaakov and Meir.
Rivam, like his brother, the Ben, right? Exactly. They had a sister Miriam, and this Miriam had a son called Yitzchak, who's the famous Ri. One of the greatest of all of the Rishonim, the Ri, Rabbi Yitzchak, who had a yeshiva in France. So he's a nephew of Rabbeinu Tam. He's a great-grandson of Rashi. And Rabbeinu Tam and his nephew, the Ri, were considered the greatest of all the Baalei Tosfos. In fact, when you're learning Tosfos, it's almost always Rabbeinu Tam and the Ri. I've mentioned before that the Maharshal writes in his introduction to his Yamshel Shloimeh on Masechta Baba Kama, he quotes a letter of the Rosh, where the Rosh says we have a tradition that Ri and Rabbeinu Tam were both greater than the Rambam in wisdom and in age. So if he argues on them, we follow Tosfos. The Maharshal himself says you can't make such rules, who's smarter than who. No. The Maharshal says in every particular halachic issue, I'll look at it and I'll decide who's right. There's no rules of who you have to follow. So that's right. And then Rashi had a third daughter who may have been Rachel, and they say she married someone by the name of Rabbi Ephraim. Okay, not known as much about that. But
He was the businessman.
There's many quote a legend that Rashi's daughters wore tefillin. Never found any source for that.
Which one?
There's a legend that Rashi's daughters wore tefillin, that all the daughters wore tefillin. But it's just, they ask a question, who was the first one to learn Chumash with Rashi? So they say Rashi's daughters. No, it was Rashi's father. Rashi's father, Rabbi Yitzchak. So, and we'll get back to him soon. So, Akoponim, Rashi spends a number of years, maybe about 10 years learning in Germany, and throughout his teens and 20s, till he finally opens up shop in Troy. And we're actually going to see that he went on a journey later on as well for a number of years. And that's it. He has his big yeshiva in Troy, and that's where he spends his life, and that's where he passes away. That's where he's buried. The accepted tradition today is he's buried in Troy. We'll see there are those that believe he's buried in Prague. We're going to see an old tradition from 500 years ago, which says he's buried in Prague. Okay? We'll see what that's about. But join me. Let's go. Number 3. Number 3 is a letter from Rabbi Tzalel Ashkenazi. Rabbi Tzalel Ashkenazi, known as the Shita Mekubetzes, which is a commentary on Gemara, a collection of works of previous scholars. Rabbi Tzalel lives in the 1500s in Egypt. He actually learned together with the Arizal. He was a little bit older. The Arizal spends most of his life in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, and the Arizal spent quite a bit of time learning together with this Rabbi Tzalel Ashkenazi. Allegedly, he helped Rabbi Tzalel put together part of the Shita Mekubetzes. But here's a letter from this Rabbi Tzalel Ashkenazi. In number 3. Tzrichin anu l'moidoi, I need to make known. Avian v'rabban shel Yisrael, the father, the teacher of all Jews, Rashi Zal, hu hamagala lana kol sasrim, he reveals all that's concealed. Ubilada, without him, the Gemara would be kedivrei hasefer achosrim, a closed book. So Rabbi Tzalel Ashkenazi 500 years ago, without Rashi, Gemara is a closed book. Rashi's commentary on Gemara is so important that the Barditchev, Reb Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev, was once in a shul or beis medrash, and a fellow was making a siyum on a masechta. And the Barditchva asked him, you finished the Masechta? The guy says, yeah. Every word? Every word. The Barditchva said, did you learn every Rashi? If you didn't learn every Rashi, you didn't finish the Masechta. The guy says, no, I finished every Rashi. The Barditchva says, yeah, but what about when Rashi quotes a foreign French word? Did you read those words? The guy said, no. The Barditchva left. He said, it's not a sin. You didn't read the old French, the laws, the French words. You should know that there are Goyish scholars who look at Rashi's commentary for the old French words to study old French. Yeah, I've seen them study certain words would have been completely lost. And there are those that have put, even ArtScroll put a lot of work into it, but those who put, tremendous amount of research in the old French words of Rashi, and where the words come from and how
did the letters
evolved over time. Rashi letters, it probably just to get Rashi would not have been able to read his own letters. What is this? What is this?
Made that first.
I don't know exactly what it is. It was the print. It was the printers.
Printing purposes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe also to differentiate between Rashi and Chumash. Apparently, the first. Yeah. No, because the first sefer ever printed in Italy apparently was not Gemara, Chumash with Rashi. So perhaps to differentiate between the two, different typeset. Fine.
No, to squeeze in.
Yeah. Also, I also made both things to differentiate and also for space purposes.
And also, it was a conspiracy among the young because they could read it and the old are struggling. I'm struggling every day.
And you know what? Today, many of the young struggle too.
With glasses.
Number four is a similar. So that's incredible. The Barditchva wouldn't stay for the.
Yeah.
It's a whopper.
Heavy.
There were a number of Chassidic Rebbes that would encourage people, make sure you read every word of Rashi, even the French words. But to consider that you haven't finished the Masechta, it's harsh. Look at number 4, a letter from the Rivosh, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sheshes, who was before the Betzalel Ashkenazi. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Sheshes is from the 1300s. He was a student of the Ran. And he writes in a letter, Hamor Agodo, the great luminary, Rabbeinu Shlomo, Rashi, he reveals the depth of the Talmud from the darkness. Wasn't clouded by anything that was concealed. Ubezulas pirush, if not for Rashi, the Gemara would be Sefer HaChosum, a sealed book. The exact same words. So Rabbi Tzal Ashkenazi is writing this in the mid-1500s. The Rivosh is writing this in the end of the 1300s, 150 years before. So you see throughout the ages, the greatest Jewish scholars said, without Rashi, Gemara is a sealed, is a closed book. In fact, all the great commentators on Gemara, for sure Rashi's grandchildren, Tosfos. You know what Tosfos means? Additions. Additions to what? Additions to Rashi. They felt that they're continuing the discussion where Rashi left off. Rashi gave a basic explanation, looking for, it's not just basic, but
Foundation.
Standard.
a thorough, basic but thorough explanation of the Gemara at hand. But Tosfos says, but hold on, this passage of Gemara needs to fit with what it says there and there and there. So they continue the discussion where Rashi left off. All the other Rishonim, they discuss the Gemara, they're first going to start with Rashi. Then they'll ask, and maybe they'll agree, they'll answer, they won't agree, but the beginning of all conversation, any serious conversation on Gemara starts with Rashi's comment. And you see, the Betzalel Ashkenazi, the Rivosh, without Rashi, Gemara is a closed book. Fine, that's Rashi's commentary on Gemara. But Rashi has incredible commentary on Chumash as well. And Nach, but particularly Chumash. Look at number 5. This is a commentary of the Levush, Rab Mordechai Yaffe. Rab Mordechai Yaffe, incredible Rav in the 1500s, passes away in 1612, right, the Levush. And he wrote a commentary on Rashi and Chumash called Levush Ha'era. And he says, Kol advarim shebepirush Rashi, everything in Rashi's commentary, he's talking about Rashi and Chumash because he's writing this in his Levush Ha'era on Chumash. Yesh bohem niglu v'nister, u'shneim emes. Not only Rashi is perfect, but there is, the words can be understood Kabbalistically, simply and Kabbalistically. And this is something that the Rebbe would quote often, called Yena Shel Torah. In Rashi, you have the wine of Torah, the secrets. There's another comment of the Shalah. I couldn't get it on the paper. The Shalah writes in Rashi's words, there are inyonim mufloim, fascinating things. The Shalah says inyonim mufloim, fascinating things in Rashi's words. The Rebbe in his Sichos understands that not to mean Kabbalah, but that Rashi's commentating on a little pshat in the pasuk, but the halachic ramifications that it has, you would never imagine. That's what the Shalom means in Yonim Mufloim. What you can extrapolate from here is incredible. But then there's the Yena Shel Torah aspect, the Kabbalah, the secrets of Torah aspect that the Levush attests to, that there's nister in Rashi's words. And it's equally there as the simple understanding of his words. In fact, look at number 6. Number 6 is a comment of the Chidah. In his Sefer Shem HaGdolim, he has a long entry on Rashi, and he quotes a very strange incident. It is so strange because I've checked up as much as I can, and I can't fully understand and grasp what transpired here, and therefore I don't have the whole thing on the paper. But he says like this: V'shamati, I heard mipeh kodesh, I heard from a holy mouth, Rav Muflag, a great rabbi, shekibul mirabbi, who received from his teacher, that Rashi fasted 613 fasts before he wrote his commentary on Torah. 613 fasts. Now that's a lot of fasts. That's a lot of fasting. But he fasted that amount before he wrote his commentary on Chumash. Okay, well that's okay. Continues the Chidah.
The Alter Rebbe comments in the Tanya that it was acceptable to fast till midday and then continue to study.
From the Yerushalmi, yeah, it's only half a fast. You'd have to do that over 1,200 times. Still take you a long time.
So the 613
and that half a fast is for those that can't hack it. But for Rashi, no, not half fast. Rashi is the full fast. Okay. Besides, the winter in Troy, I think the days aren't that long. Rabbeinu Tam, the Einokul, used to say, Mashe pirush adonis keni ashas. This that my Zayda commentated on the Gemara, Afani es, I could do that too. Avol pirush hamikra, but what my Zayda did on Chumash, leis becheli, I don't have the strength to do. Loi uchol asa, I couldn't do it. Rabbeinu Tam's famous comment, I could have done what my Zayda did on Gemara, I couldn't have done what he did on Chumash. Here's the story. Va'ato now, says the Chidor, Isi I saw b'sefer Maimer ho'itim l'rameh. The famous Reb Menachem Azariah, right? He's here again. The Rameh, he has a sefer called Maimer ho'itim. I wonder how many shurim in a row are we going that we haven't. Shenitfas b'dirim port shnas tov kufan. B'soif ha-sefer mamish. In the end of that book, Hevi Maisha, there's a story. Mimekubel Gadol, from a great Kabbalist. Pele v'hafle. It's wondrous and wondrous. The Chidah doesn't say what the story is, but he says, Miklal advarim, if you look at that story, near you'll see, Rashi kosav pirush al pisoid. When Rashi wrote his commentary on Chumash, it was all calculated Kabbalistically, with the secrets of the Torah. V'yesh b'dvarav rozin iloi, and it has supernal secrets in Rashi's words. And that's why he fasted 613 fasts. Not everyone that writes a commentary fasts for a couple of years, was it? This was no stam commentary. The commentary on Chumash is so perfectly accurate Kabbalistically that for that he fasted so much. That could also explain why Rabbeinu Tam said I couldn't do it. It could be that's why the Chidah brings this all in the same paragraph. The reason why Rabbeinu Tam said I couldn't copy it is because this commentary on Chumash is made of a different...
It's not just scholarship.
Exactly.
Chronologically.
Yes.
The Spanish rabbi who was spent 13 years in a cave and his wife about the Zohar, wasn't it?
Reb Moshe de Leon?
Yeah, Moshe Leon.
He was in the end of the 1200s.
Okay.
A while later. Moshe Rabbeinu, all of a sudden, then Moshe Rabbeinu told Rashi, Ashrecha. According to that tradition, Moshe Rabbeinu himself told Rashi, fortunate are you to compose such a commentary on my work. So So that story, whatever the story is found in the end of a book called Maimer Ha'itim to the Rameh Mipanu.
You have the sefer?
Yeah. So says the Chidah, V'hamakubal, I'll tell you who the Kabbalist was. He was a chassid Rab Nachman Bar Shmuel. Shehifli Lassos, he acted wondrously. He went on Rashi's caver. Doesn't say where, if he would say where it was, would probably in Troy. Va'asa Sigufim V'hafsakas. Rashi B'Pashtus is buried in Troy because Rashi at the end of his life, he definitely lived the end of his life in Troy. And we have a letter from Rashi where he writes how sick he was. How Rashi writes, I can't even answer you myself. I have my family reading me the letters and writing for me. So if Rashi was so ill at the end of his life in Troy, how did he get to Prague? What, he was visiting a doctor there? It's very hard, and you'll see where the tradition comes from. But most historians say it's highly unlikely that actually happened. So we're going to assume it's in Troy. But either way, it's not relevant to this story. And Va'asa sigufim v'hafsakas, and this, the Kabbalist Reb Nachman tortured himself ad shegilu lo yisoid, until finally he received a certain secret. The secret's on a Rashi in Pashas Vayeshev. Vayisnaklu oiseh, that the brothers conspired against Yosef. Rashi says it means ito, it means against him, towards him. That's the words of Rashi. Oiseh means him, says Rashi, means with him, or elov, towards him. And you can't imagine the secrets in that Rashi. Now, I've seen some more details about this story, that this Reb Nachman, he went to Rashi's caver. It says he was kicking his foot and he was screaming about something. And all of a sudden he starts to see smoke and a fiery hand. And he's pushed back. And he starts crying. And then a voice comes to him and says, "You're not like Rashi, who do you think you are? Rashi," and then Rashi himself reveals to him and says, "Do you know what it took me to write my commentary on Chumash? I had to fast 613 fasts." And that's the whole episode. It's a very fascinating, to make sense of exactly what transpired there is highly intriguing. But that's what the Chidah is saying. That's the story, which is the source, that he fasted 13 fasts. We know it because Rashi revealed himself and told this secret to that Kabbalist, who apparently went to Rashi to challenge him. That's how I understand it. And that's why he saw smoke and fire, and a voice came out and says, "Who do you think you are? You're not like Rashi." So he came to challenge Rashi. And ultimately, he received this, Rashi said, "Hello, I fasted 13 fasts." That commentary on Chumash is full of secrets of Kabbalah. Okay, that's number 6. Hold on, things get even better. What?
Do we know where Rashi's buried?
I said it's probably, there is a caver in Troy, for sure. There's lots of people go every year. There are some communities that every year during the summer they go on shul trips. I have some uncles who have the Chabad houses almost every year in the summer. Eretz Yisrael should have a speedy recovery, strong protection from the Eibishter. But many shuls go to other places, go to Ukraine, Poland, Europe, Spain, Italy, France. Maybe we should do that sometime. Who's in? But there's good Yahrtzeits during this time of the year. You want to be by Rashi. The question is if we could be in Troy and Prague on the same day, just to cover all our bases.
Prague is marked as well. That's a cave or no?
No. Well, you'll see the tradition soon. Anyhow, let's go. One. Let's go. Look at number 9. Join me in number 9. A little bit more about Rashi's Kabbalah. This is the Chidah as well quotes. Megillah Sisrei Reb Chaim Vital Zatzal. I found a manuscript, a hidden manuscript from Reb Chaim Vital, Ksav Yad, manuscript, Miksav Yodei Mamish. Often a manuscript is somebody else's, a copy of, somebody else copied it. No, this is Reb Chaim Vital's own handwriting. And he says like this. Rabbana Shlomo Zal, the Rabbi Shlomo. Now, by the way, for many years, Rashi wasn't referred to as Rashi. In the early times, he was called the French rabbi. Now, the Rambam's son, Rabbi Avram, calls him the rabbi from Tsarfas, the French rabbi. He was with the French rabbi. Or Kuntras, right. La'achar Moise, after Rashi dies, he comes in a dream to his grandson, Rab Shmuel, Rashbam. V'hikitza, and he woke him up. That he came in a dream and he woke him up. I don't know what that means. But he said, So the Rashbam says, who are you? So he said, now the Rashbam should have recognized him. They knew each other very well, we'll see. He says, I'm your Zayd Shloima. I guess Rashi in Gan Eden looks a little bit different. I'm your Zayd Shloima. Get up, wash your hands, and I'm going to teach you a secret name of God. Because I've taught you everything before except for this. The one thing I didn't teach you. Now it sounds like Rashi knew it. He says, I deliberately held it back. I withheld it from you. Rashi did it v'yashav esloi b'mamoshes. And Rashi was physically there. B'mamoshes. So he came to him in a dream. Then he woke up. And then, bam, Rashi's there physically b'mamoshes. But he couldn't see him.
No.
Go figure. And Rashi says, understand ha-pirush b'toiv. I hope you understand what I'm telling you well, because I have no more reshus to hang around. I got to go. That was it. So the Chidah says, look and see kedushasa v'toikiv. Look at Rashi's greatness. While Rashi was alive, he knew this name of Hashem. He says, I withheld it from you. Why did he withhold it? He wasn't sure if the Rashbam was eligible. When Rashi went to heaven and he saw in heaven that they felt Rashbam was eligible, he got permission to come and teach it to him. Shaloi Yahrtzeit, he didn't want, while he was alive, to teach the Rashbam until he got Rishus and he knew in heaven that the Rashbam was fitting. The Ein Laharich, I don't want to be Meir, says the Chidah. Fascinating. So Rashi knew the greatest secrets of Kabbalah while he was alive. That's what this Reb Chaim Vital attests to. So Rashi's a major Kabbalist. It gets even better, if I could say better. Look at number 8. Number 8. In the back of the Sefer, there's a Sefer called Gilgulei Neshamas from the Rameh Mipano. We quote it often during our Shabbos Shiurim. Fascinating Sefer. If not for that, I wouldn't have anything to say. He has just the material he has there is awesome. And the Rameh, at the end of the Sefer, there are a few Gilgul tidbits added by a later scholar. And there's something there which is quoted in the name of Rabbi Yehuda Arya of Modena. Who is Rabbi Yehuda Arya of Modena? One of the most colorful personalities in Jewish history. He's known as the gambling rabbi. He was a chief rabbi of Venice who lost all of his money in the casinos, time and time again, and he writes about it. He would walk in this, sometimes he didn't have a yarmulke, he had a full beard. He would write comedy, he would write plays. But he was the Rosh Yeshiva of the city, a fascinating person. Mitzvah will have a shir on him sometime. Rabbi Yehuda Arya of Modena, he was known as Leon. Arya is a lion, Leon of Modena. Rabbi Yehuda Arya. And this Rabbi Yehuda Arya wrote works against Kabbalah. And when we give a shir about him, I'll explain why he did that. It's a great work to read, a very scholarly work where he has all of his questions. He also wrote a sefer against Gilgulim. He was a jihad against Gilgulim. He believed in everything, in superstition. He was an alchemist. He had a kid that died in an alchemy experiment. He had lots of tsaros in his life. Fine, not for now. But he wrote against Gilgulim. Until at the end, until later on in life, something happened. He's the rabbi of Venice. One day he gets a knock on his door. A woman's crying. She says, Rabbi, my baby. Come. You got to come to him. So he walks to the house and he sees there's a baby there, not well. And he hears the baby, 6-month-old, open its mouth and say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. He said the only way that could have happened is if this soul existed in this world before and therefore had been accustomed to speaking. He said, once I saw that, seeing is believing. And he began to believe in Gilgulim. This story is quoted by the Chidah, that story. I saw a Jewish historian who said, he writes that the Chidah, great man, but he makes mistakes. The proof is he quoted this story. So I said, wow, that is an attack. That's an accusation. The Chidah made a mistake, and that's an accusation. Because he quoted the story, well, what's the evidence the story never happened? You know what the guy writes? It just doesn't make sense. That's the proof? The guy, whatever guy today. That's the proof. Because you think the story doesn't make sense, therefore you think the Chidah was foolish for quoting it, therefore you call him that he was inaccurate. Chutzpah. Who are you? The Chidos doesn't think very highly of you either, you know?
Neither do I. Yeah. Today
Anyhow,
it's unusual.
if you look in the end of the Sefer Gilgulei Neshamas from Menachem Azariah of Panu, in the end I said there's Gilgul tidbits from later scholars. Someone quotes there from Yehuda Arya of Modena an incredible thing about Gilgulim, which to me is proof to the Chidah story that in the end he started to believe. What does he write? So I have it in number 8. I actually have it the way it's quoted in Seder HaDoros. Seder HaDoros, written 300 years ago, from Rabbi Yechiel Halpern. He was an incredible historian, unbelievable. And he quoted just much shorter than it is in the Gilgulei Neshama, so I have it over here. Unbelievable. Look at number 8. It's found in Kabbalah. Shenefesh Rav, the Amoira Rav, comes back as Rashi. The first 3 Amoiroim, right? Everything exists on a tripod, every piece of history. So the Amoiroim starts off with the 3 big guns. There's Rav, Shmuel, and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav, his soul reincarnates in Rashi. The Nefesh Shmuel comes back as the Rambam. Shmuel was a doctor, like the Rambam was a doctor. And Nefesh Rabbi Yochanan come back as Rabbeinu Tam. And just like the halacha follows Rav Be'isuri, if Rav and Shmuel debate about monetary matters, the law follows Shmuel. If they debate about other do's and don'ts of Judaism, we follow Rav. So just like we follow Rav by the do's and don'ts, so too we follow Rashi. And just like the halacha follows Shmuel by monetary matters, we follow the Rambam. And just like when there's a debate between Rav and Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan always sways, we follow him to whichever side he leans. So b'makom shelo niskavnu, in a place where Rashi and the Rambam don't agree, we follow Rabbeinu Tam. And he quotes, it's in the end of the Sefer Gilgulei Neshamas, but it's from Yehuda Arya of Modena. So when I saw this years ago, I said, this mamish corroborates the Chidah's story. So that historian of today who said his foolish statement, he can put his sock in his mouth. But Rashi is the Gilgul of Rav. Rav was a student of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rav's real name was Abba. His name was Abba. And he wrote the majority of the Zohar. So Rav was a major Kabbalist. So then if Rashi has his soul, there's no wonder that we saw in all these other sources that Rashi was overflowing with the secrets of Kabbalah. Okay, it's an interesting thing. Fine, we continue. So Rashi's father's name was Yitzchak. Okay? There is a well-known story about Rashi's father, and we have it over here from the Seder HaDoros in number 10. Let's see the story. Rabbi Yitzchak had a beautiful pearl, a beautiful jewel. It was worth so much, and an astronomical amount, this jewel. And the people of the city wanted to acquire it for their house of the idol worship. And they offered a tremendous amount of money, an exorbitant sum. But he did not agree until Rabbi Yitzchak was brought ba'arama. That means he was tricked, taken by boat, and before he knew it, he was on the way to hand over this jewel to that church or what have you. And he was halfway through the sea. And they began to force him to hand over the jewel. When he saw that he was going to be coerced into this, he cast it into the water. And Hashem saved him from their hands, because you wonder why they didn't throw him in. So it doesn't say how it happened, God saved him. A baskol entered into his base medrash. That means Rabbi Yitzchak, Rashi's father, was a Rosh Yeshiva. And all of his students heard that you will have a child that will shine the entire world. And within the year he had a son, and he called him Shloimeh because his father's name was Shloimeh. Rashi Zaydu was Shloimeh. Well, probably passed away. The child grows up b'chachmas. No one was like him in the whole France. V'chol ha'chidushim, all the chidushim and the pirushim, everything that Rashi came up with or that he heard. Go to the next page. Continue number 11. Either from others or his own mind, he wrote on kuntresim. So Rashi was a big writer. He didn't just write his own ideas. Anything he ever heard, like the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote down everything. Rashi kept records of everything. That's why Tosfos calls him the Kuntras. He was a man who wrote everything he wrote down. V'chein Hismid discontinued until he was 33 years old. Now, you should have not, the Seder HaDoros, as great as Rabbi Chil Halpern was, and he was a great historian, he often quotes legends that he found. And he'll tell you, I found in a manuscript, it's a legend, take it or leave it. But in many of these legends that he quotes, the years are often off, the places are off, according to many, the stories are off too. But he's honest. He said, I found this, I'm bringing it here, do what you want with it. So the same thing over here, the years here may not be exact, but let's just read what he says. When he was 33, Oz Nodar, he took a vow. Rashi took a vow to go into exile for 7 years. But he says, why? To atone for his father. His father was pained when he threw the gem into the water. You don't like it, huh? Lechaper, on the sin of the pain that his father had on the stone. Although his father threw it and he sanctified God's name, he took no money for it and that was it. Nonetheless, his father was like, that's a real shot. If only a king would have bought it for his palace. It wasn't a mitzvah shlema because he didn't throw it into the water happily. Rashi's father, he said, this jewel is not going to be used in a church, but if only, a businessman would have bought it for me. If only a jeweler would have bought it. Now I lost it. So Rashi went for 7 years to atone for his father's anguish. Okay, very interesting. That part they don't tell the kids. Also for another reason he went into exile. Because Rashi finished his pirush on Torah and on most of the Gemara. But Rashi didn't want to reveal what he wrote until he traveled around to see if anybody had written the same thing or something similar. Rashi wanted to know. Often historically there were those that wrote great Sfarim, but before they printed it, someone else beat them to it. The Ramah was writing his own Shulchan Aruch, and then boom, Rabbi Yosef Kaira had it printed before him. The Chavis Yor, Rabbi Yor Chaim Bachrach, was writing a commentary on Shulchan Aruch, just like the Magen, but then before he did it, the Magen Avraham was printed and he beat him to it. It happened again and again and again. And it happens to me every time I want to come up with an idea, and it's already there. Someone just did it 6 months ago, it just came out. And that's it. So, Rashi wanted to travel. He thought maybe Kodmu Acher, maybe someone already did it and did it better. Rashi was a very humble man. That everyone attests to. Rashi thought, what's the point of me printing this, or not printing in those times, obviously, but what's the point of me disseminating these manuscripts and have people copy them and learn them if there's better stuff out there? And in this Golus, he investigated in all the different yeshivas, the pirushim available. He went to Italy, he went to Greece, Eretz HaTzvi is Israel, he went to Eretz Yisrael. He was in Egypt, and there he met the Rambam. Now that's for sure an error, because the Rambam was born 30 years after Rashi passed away. So, okay, but that doesn't mean the whole thing gets thrown out, And then Rashi, Eres Poras, Persia is in Iran. Rashi traveled really far. And then he comes back through Germany to his house in Troyes, in Shabbat Sarfas in France. When he comes back home, he finally finishes his pirush on Torah and his commentary to 23 complete Masechtas of Gemara, and a number of the other ones that weren't completed. And then he started to be mefarsim his works. Says the Seder HaDoros, Ad kan ro'isi bekuntras yoshan noishan. I found this in an old manuscript. The story about Rashi's father, the fact that Rashi had to go in Golus for 7 years to atone for his father, and the fact that he traveled a colossal amount.
But it just sounds fanciful, and it's also problematic. Okay, found it in a manuscript. Do we know the person who wrote the manuscript? It could have been a storyteller writing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Why do we have to give it any import?
Yeah.
But it did stop the altogether.
On the other hand, every kid that goes to school hears the story.
Okay, so that.
In fact, I was telling it recently to my son. He said, "Tati," he said, I've seen the story 5 times already."
Yeah, it's in books.
Boring. Move on.
That's what fanciful people do. You take a story, you embellish on it. You take, you didn't make the whole thing up. It was clearly a story with the diamond, but he embellished on it, and then he fancifully writes. How hard would it have been to travel all these places that he said? It's basically traveling the known world, and
From France to Iran. From France to 7 years, bro. Hold on. He did give him 7 years.
Yeah, but
you could walk.
still.
You could walk from France. With 7 years, you could walk by foot there and back.
And you're doing it just. And why is there no other documentation of that? If Rashi would have ended up in Italy, you would have had
Very little documentation exists of Rashi's life. We don't know when he got married.
No,
we
but
don't know
the
exactly.
Italian Schultz would have written all about it. We had the
No. He was not known at the time. On the contrary, there's stories of him walking into shul incognito. There's stories, the real legends of he would go to the Gemara of the Rav. He would see what Masechta he was learning, and then Rashi would take his pamphlets on that Masechta. He would stick it in, and then he would hide in the back of shul, and the Rav would come in and he would learn it, and the Rav was so excited. You have these stories.
Find out that Rashi
No, so yeah. No, it wasn't about him. It was about knowing that his commentary was needed. Anyhow, let's go weiter. Okay.
100 years, 50 years later, there would have been a guy who came that countries, and then somebody would have found out about it and would have said, "Oh, that was Rashi." There would have been something else that pointed to Rashi being in all these countries, other than just zero.
Other than a manuscript from
One
centuries
manuscript
ago.
of a guy writing.
First of all, somebody
It's
had
good.
to pay for the trip.
There are many stories that we have no manuscript for. Okay.
No, but you have to eat.
Join me in number 12. In number 12,
You have to have a place.
this is from the Shalshelis HaKabbalah. Okay, if you think the Seder HaDoros is guilty of Chas v'Shalom to say that, but quotes questionable legends,
No, he quoted something. He's
the,
telling you.
yeah. But if he felt like you felt, so why is he bothering us? He doesn't quote every legend that was written.
Found the great fanciful legend. And
There's probably lots of good stories written. Anyhow, so the Shalshelis HaKabbalah is from the 1500s. Rabbi Gedalia Yichya in Italy. Okay? So he predates the Seder HaDoros 150 years or so. The Shalshelis HaKabbalah is infamous for quoting legends. The Chidar writes, B'chlal, it's like, just because it says in the Shalshelis HaKabbalah doesn't mean it didn't happen. You know, that's like to the point. No, like doesn't mean it's that unreliable. To the point that the Chidar even attacks the Seder HaDoros very often for quoting the Shalshelis HaKabbalah. That's how unreliable it is. But nonetheless, the Shalshelis was a big rabbi. What was he doing? Again, he was quoting. He wanted people to be aware of all the legends that exist. Fine. In number 12, this is from the Shalshelis HaKabbalah. Kibalti, I received from the students of Meir of Padova. Rab Meir Katzenellenbogen, the Maram of Padua in Italy. The Maram of Padua was one of the greatest scholars in the early 1500s across the entire Jewish world. Says the Shalshelis HaKabbalah living in Italy. I heard from the students of this Maharam of Padova, Shebiyos Rashi Begol, that when Rashi was in exile, okay, so now we have another source that Rashi did go into self-imposed exile. Nisa'achsen bebeis Yehudi.
The Sefer HaDoros and this one.
He stays in the house of a Jew, Gibor, a strong man, a Oshir, wealthy, Parnas or Iri, took care of the Sibis Sfard. But this happened in Spain, okay? So it's not that far. It's not in Persia, it's in Spain. Ulubakashosai, the Balabos asked Rashi to write something, so Rashi wrote a sefer for the guy. He called it Sefer HaParnas. He says, you're the Parnas of the city. You oversee the needs of the community. I'm going to call it Sefer HaParnas. So Rashi wrote a sefer. Yeah, if you host Rashi for Shabbos, you get a sefer. You get a sefer. A special one for you with your name, with your titled after you. Veidu. Now, these students of the Maram of Padova testified in front of Jews, Sochrim, businessmen in Mantova, that's in Italy as well, that they went to the courtyard of the Caesar in Malchus, Bohemia, and they saw in the city of Prague, Rashi's Kvura, there was a stone matseva. It said things on it, but it was so erased they couldn't read and understand. So this is going back 500 years. Now the Shalshelis HaKabbalah is saying, this isn't Stam a legend, he's quoting from others. He's saying that the students of the Maram Padova testified about this, that Rashi is buried in Prague. So you can't just do away with that. Again, in normal,
And if you go with the chidah that he's unreliable, just because he says the student said it, that doesn't.
Oh, this was a rabbi, a big rabbin.
Unfortunately,
What's unreliable is when he quotes many, but he also says, "I found a legend. I found a legend." But when he says he heard from them,
about the students of Ottawa, he heard it from their mouth. He's not saying that he heard it from their mouth.
No, there were many.
they testified in front of the businessmen in Manitoba. I don't know.
So
Yeah.
I was getting it hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay.
Yeah, okay, fine. Either way. So, but Al we do have two sources about Rashi's exile. You want to dismiss them both based on no evidence at all? I'm sorry, that is not that you could.
I'm saying based on the chidah.
The judge has thrown out.
I'm listening to the chidah.
How in a court of law could you throw out two pieces of 500-year-old documents of evidence based on maybe?
Because they
Based on
themselves
maybe.
are not even saying where they got it. One is an anonymous.
Yeah, but what's the proof to the contrary? Where else should it say? Okay,
No, that's
fine.
the same
Let's
system
continue. Let's
CNN
continue. Let's
uses
continue.
today to tell you
Let's
that
continue.
Kamala has a brain,
Let's continue.
although it's doubtful, right?
Let's continue. Look at number 13. So here's the thing. Rashi's father was Rabbi Yitzchak. Rashi's first comment on Chumash starts with the name Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, why doesn't Chumash start in Parshas Bo, where you have the first mitzvah of the calendar, Kiddush HaChodesh, and instead you have all of these beautiful stories. I mean, it's Geschmack, it's Sefer Bereshis, but why is that really part of why is that part of Tanakh? Why is it part of the Chumash, the beginning? He quotes it in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. There was an old tradition that, do you know why Rashi quotes in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak? It's his father. It's his father. Look at number 13. The Seder HaDoros says, he's quoting from somebody else who says, I found an Eksav Yoshan Notion. Everybody has these old manuscripts, okay? So he's quoting someone who quotes this. I found it in Israel. Who says, when Rashi says, Loma Pasach Bebreshis, why does Chumash start with Bereshis? Rashi quotes in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, yeah? Eino Mazki B'shum Mokum. Nowhere in Medrash do we have it in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. Ela Masha Kosav, my time pots Bereshis, who Medrash? V'loi Divrei Rabbi Yitzchak. You do find in Medrash the question Rashi says, why don't we start in Parshas Bo? But it's not from Rabbi Yitzchak. So what's Rashi saying, Rabbi Yitzchak? Elazar Rabbi Yitzchak was Rashi's father. And he was not a scholar, according to this old manuscript. Oh, you see, the moment you mention an old manuscript, I don't want to hear it. Don't even, it's not admissible in court of law, right? Don't want to hear it.
Anonymous old man.
And Rashi wanted to honor his father, so he mentions him right away. And he says a story. So Rashi told
the Dead Sea Scrolls. They found old manuscripts there that were absolutely made up, and they were not regular Tanakh, and they were different than the Tanakh. So according to this, they're old manuscripts.
Remember that story of
Rabbi
Yonis and do you remember the story when Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshitz was a kid? The Chacham Tzvi, Rabbi Yaakov Emden's father, gave a drasha. And Rabbi Yonason he wrote on a piece of paper the basic idea of the drasha, and he played with the paper to give it that it should have it should appear to be extremely old, pour coffee, burn the edges. And he went over to the Chacham Tzvi and said, your whole drasha is found in this old manuscript.
There you go.
Old manuscripts, don't show me old manuscripts. Anyhow. But he continues his story over here. Va'amar lei. So Rashi told his father, ask me a question, I'll quote it in your name. So his father says, all right, why don't we start the Chumash in Parshas Bo? This is a story that was quoted, this is 400 years ago this story is around. At least maybe more. That Rashi asked his father, Tati, ask me something. So his father was not a big scholar, but he pulled out this question. So Rashi quotes it in his name, although the idea itself is found in Medrash. Now, if you look in the Chidah, I don't have it on the paper, but the Chidah quotes this story, and the Chidah says it's absolute rubbish, because the Chidah says if you look in Medrash, it has the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. The Chidah says it's in the Zohar, it's in Medrash, everywhere. The idea is the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. It says Rabbi Yitzchak was the one that asked. Not just that, Rashi's father was a scholar. Rashi quotes him in Gemara. We had a story, Rashi's father had a base medrash. So the Chidah says the whole thing is rubbish. It's rubbish. The Chidah says Rashi's father was a scholar, and it says Rabbi Yitzchak knew his father. That's how it is in the Medrash. So the whole thing, it's not even a good story. It's just a foolish story. What's interesting is the Seder Adoris. Okay, so he's before the Chidah. He says, V'zeh eina. He says, I don't like this old manuscript because you're saying Rashi's father is not a scholar. Rashi quotes him Sech Avodah Zarah. And he says in the Sefer Naftali Svarotz, and he asks, if you look in the Medrashim, it says Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. So says the Seder Adoris, and I'll tell you what it was. Of course in Medrash says Rabbi Yitzchak. But why did Rashi choose to start his commentary with the comment of Rabbi Yitzchak? To honor his father. That's the correct story.
That I believe.
But what happened was, it turned into, you see, that's how stories evolve. Rashi's father wasn't a scholar, so Rashi asked him for a question. This is a classical case. So the Chidah just says the whole thing's rubbish. The Seder Adoris says no. The Li Nira, I think it's true. Rabbi Yitzchak Taka said this in the times of the Medrash 2,000 years ago. But Rashi doesn't usually quote the person that says something. In the Rebbe Sichos, he'll always point out, Rashi says the name must be for a reason. Rashi very rarely quotes the name of the author, the one that said the statement Rashi quotes. So why did Rashi say Amar Rabbi Yitzchak? That was to honor his father. So that's the Seder, that's what happened. Over the centuries, the story grew and evolved. In fact, so that's Rashi's father. So Rashi writes his commentary on Gemara, his commentary on Chumash. Both of these commentaries are so precise. Rashi's commentary on Gemara throughout the ages Rashi pulled off an incredible magic trick. It's clear enough that even the beginner can use Rashi's commentary to figure out the Gemara. But the more of a scholar you become, the more you appreciate how precise Rashi's words were. And the Meiri writes in number 14, this is the Chidah says I found in an old manuscript, another one. But the truth is we know it's from the Meiri. So this is a good manuscript. The Meiri says in number 14, the head of all commentaries that were composed in a way of pirush is the pirush of Reb Shlomo, the son of Yitzchak. V'im rabu aleichem olav. Many people attack Rashi. Klizani olav. Rashi has his ammunition. Rashi is ready to defend. Uchuvasa mitoich dvarav. Rashi often in his words has already answered the question. If you look close in Rashi's words, you can already see Rashi already forewarned the question. It's all there if you can understand. But ein malasa nikeres rak liyichidim. Not everyone is able to permeate and penetrate the depth of Rashi's precision of his words. In one word, in one word, Rashi can answer bundles of questions. But Rashi didn't mean for halacha. We'll get back to that in a minute. But the Meiri's this is from the Meiri's famous words. The Meiri passes away in the early 1300s. He lives in Perpignan, in Provence, in southeast France.
Bring this down? When did I bring up Rashi? No, obviously he's from the
right.
To do it. It's just funny that the Meiri
exactly. Yeah. The Meiri said one word, a bundle of questions in one word. Exactly.
One word,
in his commentary on Chumash and his commentary on Gemara. Now there happens to be a difference between the two commentaries. We saw Rabbeinu Tam said, the commentary on Chumash I could never do. Gemara I could do. Years ago, there was a big question that was floating around. Okay, you ready for this? 2 stories about the Alter Rebbe. One of them is when the Alter Rebbe was 8 years old, the Alter Rebbe wrote a commentary on Chumash when he was 8. The Alter Rebbe says when he was 5, his mind was opened and the most difficult Gemaras or other things he understood with ease. At 8, he wrote a commentary on Chumash. But what he did was he took Rashi, Ramban, and the Ibn Ezra, and he took all their ideas and he wrote a commentary. You can get whatever you could just read his commentary and you'll get the gist of those 3. When he was 10 years old, the Alter Rebbe has a dream. The Alter Rebbe has a dream that is in Liozna, and he was in the shul. The shul had a side room and he was learning. All of a sudden he gets a tap on the shoulder. A fellow by the name of Reb Reuven Baal Shem says to the Alter Rebbe, you're being called to the main shul. You're being summoned to Bezdin. The The Alter Rebbe enters the shul. He sees there are 3 judges sitting at a table wrapped in talesim. Who's summoning to court? There's another table. 3 elder scholars. And the Bezin tells Alter Rebbe, you know who these 3 elder scholars are? That's Rashi, that's Ramban, that's Ibn Ezra. And we don't know. And they're suing you. You took their ideas, but that actually wasn't, the issue wasn't that you took their ideas. The issue is, now no one's going to learn their Sfarim. They had such a zchus that the whole world was learning their Torah, and now you've made them completely irrelevant. I would have assumed you sued them for,
Copyright.
Exactly.
Plagiarism.
The Alter Rebbe stood there shocked. He had nothing to say. So Alter Rebbe, I think he cried, but the Alter Rebbe said, so I'll burn the commentary. So Rashi, Ramban, and Ibn Ezra put their hands on the Alter Rebbe's head. And they told the Alter Rebbe, they benched him, you should be matzliach in your learning. You should be mechadish many Torah noveli. And you'll teach the world the path of service of Hashem that tens of thousands of Jews will follow till Mashiach comes. The Alter Rebbe woke up. He was so shaken by the dream, he fasted. But he had the dream again, and maybe even a 3rd time. And then he decided to burn it. So he burnt it. Years later, after the Alter Rebbe was a famous Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe said, I'm so busy with the Chassidim who come and they speak to me day and night, again and again, day after day. If I would just have, I think he said a year to myself, or a couple years, or whatever, he gave a certain amount of time. If I would have a couple years to myself, I would write a commentary on Gemara that would be so clear, you wouldn't even have to learn Rashi.
Is this before or after Tanya? Must be
We don't know. No, probably after. We don't know the exact year. He said, if I would have a couple years, don't know exactly how many years, I would write such a clear pirush on the Gemara, you wouldn't even have to read Rashi. But what could I do? I don't have the time to do it. So they asked, did Alter Rebbe not forget what happened when he was 10 years old? So I remember this question was going around 20 years ago, and an answer was going around based on what Rabbeinu Tam said. Rabbeinu Tam said, the commentary on Gemara I could have done myself. The commentary on Chumash, that's untouchable. So maybe that's why the Alter Rebbe couldn't take Rashi's commentary on Chumash from him. But the commentary on Gemara is different. When I saw that answer 20 years ago, I thought to myself, because also the Ramban and the Ibn Ezra, why would Rashi's commentary on Gemara be less than the Ramban and Ibn Ezra commentary on Chumash? But I thought the true answer, and you'll tell me what you think, is that the question is perhaps not a question at all. When it came to Chumash, the Alter Rebbe took the ideas of Rashi, Ramban and Ibn Ezra, and he put them into his own. The Alter Rebbe's commentary on Gemara, he said, I'm not going to write what Rashi wrote. I'm going to write my own commentary. It's not going to be the same as Rashi. So Rashi won't become unnecessary and unimportant. Faket, anyone that wants to what Rashi writes, you got to go see Rashi, because I'm not going to be copying him. It's not going to be a copy of Rashi. It's not going to be irrelevant. By Chumash, it will become irrelevant, because whatever you want to see there, you can see in the Alter Rebbe's commentary. That he had no rishus to do. But when it came to the commentary on Gemara, it was me a different commentary. Anyhow, that's how I think is the answer to that interesting.
These stories are documented.
Yeah, so the first one is from the Frierdiker Rebbe. Yeah. Second one, I don't remember the source, but no, it's not. It was printed in Biton Chabad, which was a publication that the Rebbe was unhappy with parts of it. But this was printed in the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe. I don't know.
You said it's true. I mean, if it was printed in it, and we know the Rebbe's unhappy.
Well, it wasn't. He was unhappy with some of the other things written, not the stuff written in the name of the Frierdiker Rebbe.
To go on?
No, then it came to a close after a number of years because the Rebbe was upset about certain inaccuracies. Okay, next. Now, look here. The Meiri does say in number 14 that as perfect as Rashi's commentary is, it's not for halacha. It's not for halacha. It's perfect, but not for halacha. Look at number 15 to see how perfect it is. Rashi had a grandson called the Rashbam. This is also from the Seder Hadaris. Rashbam was the firstborn in his family, from his mother Yocheved. He was born while his father Meir was young, and the Rashbam knew his Seder Rashi very well. And the Rashbam, Reb Shmuel, made a commentary on Gemara while Rashi was alive. But the Rashbam's commentary on Gemara is excessive. It's long. It's ba'arichas. He goes on and on. It's not like Rashi. That's why Baba Basra is so big, thanks that we have Rashbam's commentary. It goes on and on and on. I mean, it's beautiful to read, but it's very lengthy. And Rashi, when he saw that his grandson was Ma'irich Meir, but it was too long, Chora Apai, Rashi became angry. V'sarfu, and he burnt it in front of his grandson. They burnt it. Who burnt it, we don't know. But it was because Rashi was so angry, upset, enraged, and why his grandson was writing like that, it was burnt. Some say it wasn't burnt, but Rashi commanded that no one should learn the commentary. They shouldn't learn Gemara with... Anyhow, then he brings that the Rashbam also wrote on the Rif, and the Rashbam finished some of the Masechtas that Rashi couldn't because Rashi passed away. But you see, Rashi was not happy with the Rashbam's commentary. Either he burnt it, or he instructed no one should learn it. So you see how Rashi, the brevity was of extreme importance in the eyes of Rashi. But the Meiri says, nonetheless, Rashi is not writing according to halacha, not in his commentary on Chumash and not in the commentary of Gemara. So look at number 16, though. I want to show you it's not so simple at all. There is... this happens to be an issue in the laws of tzitzis. If somebody has a garment with tzitzis and you place more tzitzis upon it, you have, instead of the 8 strings on each corner, you double it. You have double the amount of tzitzis. That's called Baal Tosef. You can't add to the mitzvahs. The question is, but if you add the extra 8 strings and then you cut off 8 strings, is it good? You would think it's good, but it's not so simple. Because it could be when you add another 8 strings, the whole talus is invalid. And when you cut off 8 strings, the issue with the tzitzis is it says you have to make tzitzis. Tzitzis can't be used by something that happens to be there. Since it was possible, so it was disqualified. And now you cut off the excess, boom, you want to have tzitzis, you actually have to make them. So there's a big debate between the Rambam and the Rosh about that.
Why would somebody put
It's not.
No. The answer would be no. Well, it could be that you don't know exactly how to take off the old ones. So you have a professional coming in a half hour to do that, but you do know how to add the new ones. So you add the new ones now, and later they'll take all the old ones. Imagine a case like that.
Around, I believe it. But it's easy to undo than to do.
We don't want to undo them. You don't know where to put them, and you don't want to. So. Or let's say you're trying to show something, whatever the reason is. So there's a debate between the Rambam and the Rosh about those halachas. It happens to be that Rashi in Gemara follows the Rosh. So Rabbi Yosef Kaira, in his Beis Yosef on the tour in the laws of Tzitzis in the 10th Siman, says you have a Rambam on one side, right? The Beis Yosef said when it comes to halacha, there's 3 pillars. Rif, Rambam, and Rosh. He says you have the Rambam on one side, the Rosh on the other, but Rashi learns the Gemara like the Rosh. So the two of them should outweigh the Rambam. Rabbi Yosef Kaira says, Rashi! You can't bring Rashi into the world of halacha. Rashi is just a commentary on the Gemara. It has no halachic weight. And therefore it's just the Rosh versus the Rambam. And Rabbi Yosef Kaira is a Sfardi, so of course he's going to take the Rambam over the Rosh. So that's what, so Rabbi Yosef Kaira's opinion is Rashi's commentary on Gemara does not have halachic weight. It's based on the Meiri in number 14, who said in the last line that Rashi did not have in mind to paskin. The Radvaz, who was also a Sephardic rabbi in Egypt, writes the same thing in a letter, that Rashi is a parsh and Rashi is a commentator, not a posek. What?
You said that Rashi also wasn't officially a Rav.
He did field questions, though, from around the world.
Right, but he...
Right. But the question is his commentary. So look at number 16. Comes the Tosfos Yom Tov, Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller, in his commentary on the Rosh, in Masechta Menachos, in the laws of Tzitzis, he says, Va'ani Aimer, I say, Shezu Shaton, this said Rabbi Yosef Kaira writes, he pushes away Rashi, not to count him in the numbers of the halachists. when you're trying to figure out the majority. Because he's a parshan, he's only a commentator, he's not a paskin. He doesn't Ein daiti noicha b'zeh klal, says the Tosfos Yom Tov, rubbish. Do you think Rashi would explain the Gemara if he felt in one way, A, if he felt the halacha was B? If Rashi explained the Gemara is a halachic text. Rashi is explaining what he feels the Gemara means. Or do you think Rashi feels the halacha is different? And he's explaining A when he thinks it means X? God forbid, chas leila Rashi. How chas is shown that Rashi would explain the sugya based on what it would seem, even though he holds differently, according to halacha. How could Rashi hold the halacha is B and explain the halachic text of the Gemara in the manner of A? Can't be. Do you think wouldn't Rashi be concerned someone might actually take his commentary for real and pass him that way? If Rashi felt the halacha was B, how in the world with a good conscience could he explain the Gemara in the manner of A? Wouldn't he be concerned someone might take him seriously and follow that path? Chalil. And there's no question that all of his pirushim that he explains are his maskon according to halacha. Therefore, vadai he counts in the minyan in the when you the number game when you want to follow the majority of halachic opinions. The halachis Rashi is no less than anybody else. Faket Rashi. So he couldn't be clear that he disagrees with the Beis Yosef on this and the Radvaz. He's not the only one. There's a sefer called Halachas Ktanas from Rabbi Yaakov Chagiz, one of the great Sephardic poskim centuries ago. He writes the same thing on this very issue. On this very tzitzis issue, he attacks the Beis Yosef and says the exact same questions as the Tosfos Yom Tov. So you have the Halachas Ktanas, who's a well-known accepted source. You have the Tosfos Yom Tov. Against some of the big Sephardic guns, the Beis Yosef, the Radvaz, can Rashi's words be taken according to halacha? The Chidah gets involved in this debate, and the Chidah says, but look at number 14. He doesn't quote the Meir, but he says it's an old manuscript. And the old manuscript says Rashi's commentary is perfect, but he didn't have in mind for halacha. The Chidah says, what does that mean? He says, you find in Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan told somebody, I'm telling you an explanation, but until I tell you halacha l'maisa, you can't follow it. I'm telling you in theory what makes sense, what could be, what should be, what would be. You can't take it to the bank until I tell you halacha l'maisa. So the Chidah says, so then, but why would Rabbi Yochanan ever say anything? Isn't he worried that someone might take him the exact same words of the Tosfos Yom Tov? Isn't he worried someone might take his theory seriously? No. In the world of halacha, it's known. Until someone says halacha l'maisa, it's in the world of theory. It's a good theory. Sometimes the greatest theories are just not the way we act. It's not halacha l'maisa. Exactly. Not just that. Sometimes we don't pass him like Rab Meir, although he was smarter than the others. The Sefer HaChinuch says Rabbi Eliezer was the greatest scholar of his day, but we don't pass him like him. Sometimes the greatest theories are dafka the ones that are not accepted in actuality. So the Chidah says, no, you have to go back a bit. You have to understand. Rashi is telling you what he thinks Pshat in the Gemara is, yes. But that doesn't mean that's, but the question is what? So Rashi himself would have passed him different? So why isn't he worried someone might accidentally pass him like his Pshat? Right. Because the Chidah says, Rashi assumes that you would understand this is the world of theory. That's what the Chidah says. Fine.
He's not supposed to explain you the
Okay, fascinating. Let's move on because we're just going to finish right now.
That doesn't make sense, because why would he
what doesn't make sense? The whole shir?
No. Why would he possibly think on the Gemara that you're going to have a different opinion than you do on Chumash? If on Chumash he writes, he writes and he expects you to. Why should you not follow on the Gemara?
No, we definitely don't follow his commentary on Chumash for halacha. It's a commentary on Chumash.
Yeah, but you accept it. You accept it as something.
Oh, yeah. It's an explanation. Yeah, but doesn't mean you act upon that.
Well,
doesn't mean you act upon that.
Of course you act.
No, the Gemara is a halachic text. You should Rashi. Okay. But, we'll discuss this. Okay. In number 17 is a Hayom Yom, a beautiful Hayom Yom. The Alter Rebbe once said, "Pirush Rashi af Chumash is Yena shel Torah." Rashi's commentary on Chumash is the wine of Torah. Remember what the Levush said, that in the words of Rashi on Chumash, there's equally the open the revealed explanation and the Kabbalistic. The Alter Rebbe said Rashi's Comment to Chumash is the wine of Torah. Paisech Halev, it opens up the heart. It reveals a love and fear atzmius that essentially exists in the soul. Rashi's pirush on Gemara opens up the mind and reveals the essence of intellect. They say what the Alter Rebbe meant, it reveals the essence of intellect, that when you read Rashi's words, they're so enlightening that ideas flicker in your mind that you can later develop. So the developing and the comprehension you do yourself, but Rashi, ever so carefully in his words, already sends you in that direction. So he gets to the core of your mind, to the core of the idea. He gets that, like the chokhmah, the flame to flicker, and then already you can go down that path and develop it yourself. The question is if this has anything to do with Rabbeinu Tam's comment, that Rashi's commentary on Gemara I could have done, but not the commentary on Chumash. The commentary on Gemara to open up the mind I could have done, but to open up the love and fear that I couldn't do. It could be this explains Rabbeinu Tam. No, well the Chidoks seem to explain Rabbeinu Tam based on the fact that the commentary on Chumash is full of Kabbalah.
Yeah, well, that's what
Fine. Number 18. Somebody quotes in the name of Reb Shalom of Belz. Shalom of Belz was one of the great Chassidic rabbis, Rebbes 180 years ago. The Sar Shalom of Belz. The Rebbe Marash once went to visit the Rebbe, the Sar Shalom, and the Rebbe Marash was hiding in a corner of the shul, and the Sar Shalom was blind. He walks into shul, and he tells the Gabbai, the one that was his attendant who was walking, the Shamash, he directs him to the corner of the shul where the Rebbe Marash was standing in the crowd, and he found him. The Sar Shalom was blind, and he tells the Rebbe Marash, "Junger Mann, von mir kannst du sich nicht behalten. You can't hide from me." He pulls him to the front table, and okay, well let's leave that story for now. But look at number 18. The Sar Shalom of Bel said, if someone learns every single week the pirush Rashi ala Torah, if you learn Chumash with Rashi every week, you are assured that in the world of truth, you will be al kopanim in the Mesifta of Rashi. You will be in Rashi's yeshiva. Even though there are yeshivas which are greater, there are greater yeshivas in heaven, but one thing for sure, whatever's going to be with you, you won't be thrown out of Rashi's yeshiva. So if you learn Rashi every week, one thing is certain, you'll be admitted to Rashi's yeshiva in heaven. There's other yeshivas, what will be with them, who knows? But one thing for sure. The Bavadia Yosef, it's a video that he spoke. He said, if you don't wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin, right, most of the world just wears Rashi's. He said, imagine after 120 you go to heaven, just like there's Rashi's yeshiva, Rabbeinu Tam is a big yeshiva, and you want to walk in, he says, you never wore tefillin, can't let you in. He says, imagine the shame, imagine the embarrassment. He said, you got to wear Rabbeinu Tam's tefillin. There was a story actually, a while back, one of the Chassidic Rebbes, the recent Chassidic Rebbes told it over, that in Eretz Yisrael, there were a few Bachrim, that I think they were in a car accident, some accident in Eretz Yisrael. They all passed on. And there was one of these three guys had a Chavrusa in Yeshiva who was terribly missing his friend, and he was completely broken and shattered, couldn't get himself together. And one night he has a dream, and his friend came to him and he said, don't be so shaken up. He says, you know where I am in heaven? I used to learn Rashi every day, Chumash Rashi. I'm in Rashi's yeshiva in heaven. Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it happened a number of decades ago. So wherever we're going to be in heaven, one thing for sure, if we do chitas, we'll be allowed in Rashi's yeshiva. We'll be allowed in Rashi's yeshiva.
You know, what's your opinion about that he's not buried in France? I mean, it sounds to me so incredulous, but he has his son-in-laws, his daughters, his grandsons.